This is why weak men hate you for winning, while they rot in self-pity. You've seen it everywhere. The moment you start succeeding, the moment you start building something real, they come crawling out of the woodwork with their excuses, their complaints, their desperate attempts to drag you back down to their level. They can't stand to see you rise because your success is a mirror that reflects their own pathetic choices. Weakness isn't genetics, it's a choice. And Nietzsche saw their excuses: laziness, fear, blaming others. Friedrich Nietzsche understood something that most men today refuse to accept: that weakness is not something that happens to you, it's something you choose every single day. Every time you make an excuse instead of taking action. Every time you blame your circumstances instead of changing them. Every time you choose comfort over growth, safety over danger, mediocrity over excellence. Unless you break these 7 chains, you'll drown in their victim mentality. The weak men around you aren't just failing. They're actively trying to pull you down with them. They're spreading their poison, their excuses, their victim mentality like a disease. And if you're not careful, if you don't have the tools to dominate them, you'll find yourself infected with their weakness. But here's what Nietzsche knew that weak men don't. Strength isn't about genetics, luck, or circumstances. It's about philosophy. It's about the principles you live by, the rules you follow, the mindset you cultivate. And today, you're going to learn the exact system that separates the dominators from the dominated. The weak man epidemic isn't just a problem. It's an opportunity. While they're drowning in their own pathetic existence, you're going to learn how to rise above them, how to dominate them, how to use their weakness as a stepping stone to your own greatness. We're living through the greatest epidemic of weakness in human history. Everywhere you look, you see men who have given up on themselves, men who have chosen the path of least resistance, men who would rather complain than compete. They're lost, broken, and envious, and they want you to join them in their misery. Why weak men stay lost? Look around you. How many men do you see who are truly living? How many have a purpose that drives them, a mission that consumes them, a vision that pulls them forward? The answer is almost none. Instead, you see men scrolling endlessly through social media, consuming content instead of creating value, living vicariously through others instead of building their own empire. They're lost because they've never learned to navigate by their own compass. They're waiting for someone else to give them direction, waiting for permission to be great, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. They've become spectators in their own lives, watching other men live while they waste away in comfortable mediocrity. This isn't an accident. This is the result of a society that has taught men to be followers instead of leaders, consumers instead of creators, victims instead of victors. They've been programmed to seek safety, to avoid risk, to conform to the lowest common denominator. And the result is a generation of men who are spiritually dead while they're still breathing. Why weak men stay broken? But being lost is just the beginning of their pathology. The truly weak don't just lack direction, they're actively broken, and they're addicted to their brokenness. They wear their trauma like a badge of honor, their problems like a crown of thorns. They've turned their pain into their identity, their struggles into their excuse for everything. You've met these men. They're the ones who can't have a conversation without bringing up their depression, their anxiety, their childhood trauma. They've turned therapy into a lifestyle, problems into a personality, and healing into a hobby they never want to finish. They're trauma-obsessed because their trauma gives them permission to be weak. They don't want to get better because getting better would mean taking responsibility. It would mean admitting that they have power over their circumstances, that they can choose their response to what happens to them. And that terrifies them more than staying broken forever. This is what Nietzsche meant when he talked about the slave mentality, the psychological need to remain a victim, because it's easier than becoming a master. They've made their weakness their strength, their problems their power, their limitations their identity. Why weak men stay envious? But perhaps the most toxic aspect of weak men is their envy. They can't stand to see other men succeed because success reminds them of their own failures. They can't celebrate another man's victory because it highlights their own defeat. So instead of using successful men as inspiration, they use them as targets. You've seen this everywhere. The moment a man starts building something real, starts making real money, starts getting real results, the weak men come out of the shadows to tear him down. They call him lucky, privileged, toxic, problematic, anything to avoid confronting the fact that he's simply better than they are. They're not just envious, they're actively sabotaging. They spread gossip, they undermine confidence, they create drama and chaos wherever they go. They can't build anything themselves, so they dedicate their energy to destroying what others have built. This is the resentment that Nietzsche warned about, the poison that weak men inject into everything they touch. They hate excellence because it exposes their mediocrity. They hate strength because it reveals their weakness. They hate success because it proves that their excuses are lies. Nietzsche saw through all of this centuries ago. He understood that humanity is divided into two types, the strong and the weak, the masters and the slaves, the creators and the destroyers. And he gave us a roadmap for domination. The higher man ignores the weak. The strongest, they dominate through action. This isn't about being cruel or heartless, it's about recognizing reality. The strong create value, the weak consume it. The strong solve problems, the weak become problems. The strong build empires, the weak tear them down. The statistics prove this epidemic of weakness is real and growing. A 2024 study found that 72% of men feel trapped in mediocrity, unable to break free from their circumstances, unable to create the life they actually want. This isn't just a personal problem, it's a civilizational crisis. But for you, it's an opportunity. While 72% of men are drowning in mediocrity, you're going to learn the 7 rules that will put you in the 28% who dominate. These aren't just strategies or tactics, they're principles that will fundamentally transform how you see yourself and your place in the world. The first rule of domination is to crush pity, both the pity you feel for yourself and the pity others try to give you. Nietzsche's famous words ring true. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But most men have perverted this wisdom. Instead of using their struggles as fuel for growth, they use them as excuses for weakness. Weak men are addicted to pity. They love to tell their sob stories, to explain why they can't succeed, to list all the reasons why life is unfair. They've turned their problems into their identity and their struggles into their excuse for everything. They don't want solutions. They want sympathy. But dominators understand that pity is poison. Every moment you spend feeling sorry for yourself is a moment you're not spending improving yourself. Every excuse you make is a choice to remain weak. Every time you blame your circumstances, you're giving away your power to change them. The action step is simple but powerful. Delete victim language from your vocabulary and track one win daily. Stop saying things like, I can't, it's not fair, I don't have time, I'm not lucky. These phrases are the language of weakness, the vocabulary of victims. Replace them with the language of power. I will, I'll find a way. I'll make time, I'll create my own luck. And every single day, no matter how small, track one win. One thing you accomplished, one step you took toward your goals, one moment where you chose strength over weakness. This isn't about being positive, it's about training your mind to focus on progress instead of problems. The second rule is to embrace war. Not physical conflict, but the war against mediocrity, against comfort, against the forces that want to keep you small. Nietzsche understood this when he said, you must have chaos within you to birth a dancing star. Most men avoid conflict at all costs. They seek comfort, safety, predictability. They want a life without friction, without struggle, without challenge. But this is exactly what makes them weak. Strength is forged in the fire of conflict, and men who avoid all struggle remain soft and weak their entire lives. Dominators actively seek conflict that grows them. Not petty drama or meaningless arguments, but meaningful challenges that force them to level up. They engage in debates that sharpen their thinking. They take on projects that stretch their capabilities. They put themselves in situations where they might fail because they know that's where real growth happens. The action step is to deliberately seek conflict that grows you. Join a debate club. Take on a challenging project at work. Start a business in a competitive market. Learn a skill that scares you. The goal isn't to be difficult, it's to be excellent. And excellence requires you to engage with forces that resist you. The third rule is to burn idols, to reject society's expectations, and build your own code of conduct. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead and we have killed him wasn't about atheism. It was about the death of external authority and the birth of individual responsibility. Weak men are slaves to what others think. They live according to society's rules, their parents' expectations, their peers' approval. They've never developed their own philosophy, their own values, their own vision of what life should be. They're living someone else's life and wondering why they feel empty. But dominators understand that true strength comes from creating your own meaning, your own purpose, your own rules. They don't ask permission to be great. They don't wait for society to approve of their choices. They don't need external validation to know they're on the right path. The action step is to reject society's shoulds and build your own code. What do you actually believe? What do you actually value? What kind of man do you actually want to become? Not what your parents want, not what society expects, not what's popular or politically correct. What do you believe? Write down your personal code of conduct, your non-negotiable principles, your definition of success, your vision of the ideal life, and then live by it, regardless of what anyone else thinks. The fourth rule is to command respect by demanding excellence from yourself and others. Nietzsche observed that no one lies more boldly than the man who is indignant. Most men think they can demand respect while accepting mediocrity, but respect is earned through excellence. Weak men tolerate disrespect because they don't respect themselves. They accept being treated poorly because they believe that's what they deserve. They surround themselves with energy vampires, people who drain their motivation and lower their standards. But dominators understand that respect is not given, it's commanded, and it's commanded through unwavering commitment to excellence. They hold themselves to high standards, and they hold others to high standards too. They don't accept mediocrity from themselves, and they don't accept it from the people in their lives. The action step is to demand excellence and cut energy vampires from your life. Raise your standards for yourself first, in your work, your health, your relationships, your character, and then raise your standards for the people you allow in your inner circle. If someone consistently brings drama, negativity, or mediocrity into your life, remove them. The fifth rule is to weaponize suffering, to turn your pain into fuel for your growth. Nietzsche's insight that he who has a why can bear almost any how reveals the secret of how strong men transform their struggles into strength. Weak men are destroyed by suffering. They let their pain break them, define them, limit them. They use their struggles as excuses for why they can't succeed. They become victims of their circumstances and stay victims forever. But dominators weaponize their suffering. They use their pain as motivation to build something better. They transform their struggles into strength, their obstacles into opportunities, their wounds into wisdom. They don't just survive their difficulties, they use them to become stronger than they ever could have been without them. The action step is to turn your pain into fuel. Whatever you're struggling with, financial problems, relationship issues, health challenges, career setbacks, use it as motivation to level up. Channel that energy into the gym, into building new skills, into making more money. Don't waste your suffering by just enduring it. Use it to forge yourself into something stronger. The sixth rule is to become dangerous, not in a reckless or harmful way, but in the sense of being formidable, competent, and not to be underestimated. Nietzsche warned that the individual has always had to struggle, not to be overwhelmed. Weak men are harmless, and harmless men are powerless. They've been domesticated, neutered, made safe, and predictable. They pose no threat to anyone, which means they also pose no value to anyone. They're not dangerous enough to be feared or respected, which makes them easy to ignore and manipulate. But dominators understand that respect comes from being formidable, not from being a bully or a tyrant, but from being someone who cannot be pushed around, someone who has options, someone who has power. They develop themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually to the point where they're not just surviving, they're thriving. The action step is to master one physical and one mental discipline. Physical could be boxing, martial arts, weightlifting, or any discipline that makes you physically formidable. Mental could be stoicism, meditation, public speaking, or any discipline that makes you mentally unshakable. The goal is to become someone who cannot be easily overwhelmed by life's challenges. The seventh and final rule is to rule or serve. To understand that life is about power, and you're either exercising it or subject to it. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power isn't about dominating others for its own sake. It's about understanding that power dynamics are inevitable, and you get to choose which side you're on. Weak men live in the middle ground, neither leading nor following effectively. They're not bold enough to take charge, but they're not humble enough to serve excellently. They exist in mediocrity, neither creating value nor supporting those who do. But dominators understand that there is no middle ground. You're either dominating your craft, your industry, your life, or you're serving those who are, and both can be paths to excellence. A master craftsman dominates his craft, a loyal soldier serves his commander with excellence. But there's no honor in mediocrity. The action step is to choose. Dominate your craft or serve those who do, but accept no middle ground. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, commit to being the best in your field. If you're going to be an employee, commit to being invaluable to your leader. Excellence demands that you choose a side and commit fully to it. These 7 rules create what Nietzsche would call the dominator mindset, a way of thinking that separates the strong from the weak, the masters from the slaves, the creators from the consumers. The contrast between weak men and dominators isn't subtle. It's stark and obvious once you know what to look for. Weak men spend their time scrolling through social media, consuming content, living vicariously through others. They complain about their circumstances but take no action to change them. They're stagnant, reactive, and powerless. Dominators spend their time building, creating, leading. They're constantly learning, growing, evolving. They don't consume life, they create it. They don't react to circumstances, they shape them. They don't wait for opportunities, they create them. The key shift is this: weak men obey reality as it's presented to them. Dominators create reality according to their vision. Weak men accept the world as it is. Dominators build the world as they want it to be. This is why weak men will call you toxic when you embrace these principles. Your power exposes their cowardice. Your success highlights their failure. Your strength reveals their weakness. They'll try to shame you back into mediocrity because your excellence makes them uncomfortable with their own choices. But remember Nietzsche's wisdom. The opinion of the weak doesn't matter. They're not your peers, they're not your equals, and they're not your judges. They're the very people you're rising above. When you implement these 7 rules, when you truly embrace the dominator mindset, you'll find that your entire life transforms. You'll stop being pushed around by circumstances and start pushing back. You'll stop being a victim of your environment and start being a creator of your destiny. The weak men around you will notice the change, and they won't like it. They'll try to pull you back down, to convince you that you're being too extreme, too aggressive, too ambitious. But their resistance is proof that you're on the right path. This is your moment of choice. You can continue living like the 72% of men who feel trapped in mediocrity, or you can join the ranks of the dominators who create their own reality. You can remain weak and comfortable, or you can become strong and powerful. The 7 rules are your weapons in this war against weakness. Crush pity, embrace war, burn idols, command respect, weaponize suffering, become dangerous, rule or serve. These aren't just concepts, they're a complete system for transformation. Smash like if you choose domination. Your like isn't just engagement, it's a declaration of war against weakness, a commitment to excellence, a vote for your own greatness. Subscribe for more. Next video, Machiavelli's 5 Laws of Ruthless Power. We're going deeper into the philosophy of power, the psychology of dominance, the strategic thinking that separates winners from losers. Nietzsche's final challenge echoes through time. Become who you are, or rot as what they want you to be. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Every day you delay is another day you remain weak. Every moment you hesitate is another moment you give to mediocrity. Your throne awaits, but thrones aren't given, they're taken. The weak men around you will never hand you power. You have to seize it, earn it, dominate your way to it. The 7 rules are your map to that throne. but you have to walk the path yourself. The war against weakness starts now. The question isn't whether you're capable of domination. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price for it. Nietzsche knew that price, and he paid it. Now it's your turn.